everybody. Welcome to the Sharpened Podcast, brought to you by Acumen, a growth community for business owners and CEOs, helping you grow and get to the next level. I'm your host, Dan Cooper. My guest today is Kelly Shackelford. He's the CEO of the First Liberty Institute, and we're heading into a unique direction in our conversation today. Our guest has argued before the United States Supreme Court, testified before the U.S. House and Senate, and has won numerous landmark First Amendment and religious liberty cases, including 3 in the Supreme Court. Today, we're going to go on an origin journey, talk about seeing the future, and highlight some of the things that I bet you didn't know because I didn't know. So, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Happy to be with you.
So before we do a deep dive, give us a high level on the First Liberty Institute and then how you got to here, because this is the weirdest job ever.
Yeah, First Liberty is the largest legal nonprofit in the country that all we do is religious freedom. So, let's say you're a 5-year-old girl, your name is Gabriela Perez, and you're told to stop praying over your meal because, quote, it's not good to pray in school. And you're a poor family, you don't exactly have the ability to go out and hire a legal team to protect your daughter and religious freedom. And so we come in, we represent them free of charge. We bring in the best litigators in the country who all donate their time so that when Gabriella wins her case, which she did, we don't just win for Gabriella, but we set a precedent really for all of our kids and our grandkids, because the normal person could never afford to fight the government over our constitutional rights. And so we'd all lose our religious freedom. So that's really kind of quickly what we do.
Sure. Okay. So how do you get started doing this? What's your origin story?
Back when I was in high school, I knew my gifts were in analytical thinking and speaking. And so I thought, I either need to be a pastor or a lawyer. And, people were like, well, that's like a God or Satan choice, isn't it? Being a pastor or a lawyer. And, I went and talked to my youth pastor and he said, I know a lot of Christian pastors. That's a wonderful calling if that's your calling. But I will say this, we could use some more Christian lawyers. And I realized I was analyzing my DNA and I realized I'd probably be better at dispensing justice rather than mercy. So I'd probably be a better lawyer than a pastor. And I went to law school and really had a heart for ministry. So I led the discipleship ministry at my church when I was in law school for the college students. And that's really a bad idea because you're supposed to be studying like 24/7 in law school. And I was average intelligence for any entering student in law school. But when the grades came back, I was making the high grades. And it was just God's way to show me, look, keep your heart for ministry, but I want you to focus on law. And so I got out, I clerked for a federal judge. When you do that, it's like a 1-year deal. You sort of, you get to like see things that other people never see. Like, what is it like to be on the other side of the bench? What is influential? What's over the top? What loses you credibility? And it's just a unique thing that after the end of that year, all the law firms want you because you have such a good perspective to bring to the firm. And I had all those offers and I just sat in my little clerk's office and I thought, man, I just feel like I'd suffocate doing regular law. I don't feel like that's what God's calling me to do. And I remember thinking, well, what do you want to do? And I thought, well, I want to use my legal skills because God's shown me he wants me to do that. But I want to help churches and pastors and religious freedoms and our founding principles. And I'd even like to go to seminary part-time. And I laughed because there was no paying job like that in the country.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I got a call from 2 partners in big national law firms, never met them in my life. And they said, look, we started donating our time for religious freedom and we're getting so many calls now, it's hurting our ability to make a living. We were just wondering, would you be willing to come on, do legal cases, help pastors, churches, religious freedoms, and our founding principles, and you can even go to seminary part-time if you want. And, being a little young in my faith, I said, let me pray about it. Like that wasn't the answer to prayer. And, I called these guys back like a day later and said, I'm in. And they pitched in out of their pocket. We started a nonprofit, and that was 36 years ago. And I mean, only in God's, plan. I mean, never was it my idea that 36 years later, we would have had, 9-0 at the Supreme Court. I mean, helping presidents pick the next justices and judges on the court. I mean, the stuff that's happened is just way beyond anything I even thought possible. It's a little by little, it was me and an assistant. It was, me and two assistants. It was, 5 or 6. I mean, just slowly through the years, we added and learned and grew. And now we're the largest legal group in the country that all we do is religious freedom. And so it's a God thing. God knew it needed to be. He created it, and he gave me the desire of my heart at the same time, because he created me to do this. And all these people that get to work with me, they have the same passion. And so it's a blessing to be able to do what we get to do.
So you going from founder to today, I bet the work has changed a little bit. What do you do for a living today?
Yeah, this is it. This is what I do for a living. This is but it's really different. Back in the beginning, the cases weren't as hostile. They weren't as extreme. I mean, it's just new. It's in the old days, it was, so and so is doing something, the government's saying you can't do that, and they're saying, but I'm doing this because of my faith, and there's a battle, right? Now the government's like coming in and trying to tell people what their faith can be. They're coming in and saying, oh, you churches need to follow the government. And I mean, we have a whole rash of cases right now that we've never had. This is all new, where pastors are being criminally charged for helping a homeless person, for feeding somebody, for things that Jesus says to do. They're doing those things, and it's not just they're being complained about by some city official, they're getting criminally prosecuted. And we've never had cases like that. We got a whole covey of these cases now, and so we're fighting over who has the parental rights over our children. Is it the government, or is it the parents? I mean, these are not things we used to really have to battle over, but now we're having to fight over these. Now the good news is, which we can get to further in the conversation, but is we're winning. I mean, we win way over 90% of our cases. We have the best litigators in the country, and the law is on our side. And we can talk about the model or the method for how we do things, which is very unique. But that's the good news. We can win if people are willing to stand up. And we are watching a huge move of God right now in the courts in a positive ways towards religious freedom. And so it's all good news, but we're in a battle. And so it's going to require people, whether they're running their business or their family or their schools or anything else, to stand for their faith. And if they do, the law's on their side. That's the blessing of this country. But it does require people to stand into the winds at time, what's going to feel like, although if they'll hang on, at the end, they'll win.
So let's get into your business model, as we might call that. How does it work?
Well, every nonprofit legal group that exists in the country, if you look at them, and I don't care if it's left wing or right wing, whatever their issue, whether they're the environmental group, the Sierra Club, or whether they're, a conservative group, a property rights group, or whatever, they have the same model. Raise as much money as you can raise, use that money to hire as many attorneys as you can, put them in an office in DC or LA or New York, and then fly them around the country to do the cases on their issues. That's their model. That is not our model. Our model is there's all these people of faith who went to law school because they wanted to stand for what's right. And, 30 years later, these are the best litigators at really some of the most powerful law firms in the world. And they've done honorable work for their clients, huge corporations. I mean, big clients. They've never gotten to do a case for the kingdom. And we come and sit down with them and we say, look, if we give you everything you need, we have on our staff all top of their class from all the best law schools, and all they do is religious freedom. We will cover all your out of pockets, so you don't have to pay for anything for depositions and court fees and experts and all this stuff. If you will bring, if we will bring that, will you bring your law firm and your time free of charge? And they're like, man, I've been waiting my whole life, sign me up.
Yeah.
And you can imagine when they get that first case, I mean, literally the first time in their life that all their talent, their gifts, their training, everything they learned is lined up with their faith and their love for their country. They've never felt that before. And so it's kind of unfair, but we now know at that point, we now have them for the rest of their lives as one of our volunteer attorney, because they're going to do these, it's just too awesome. And they give cover to the younger attorneys who then are allowed to taste what it's like, and they're never going to go away. So if you were to go through the top, 100 law firms in the United States, you'd find most of those firms don't just donate their time. They'll actually fight each other over who gets to donate their time. So the result of this is twofold. My idea was saving money. And yes, that's the way it comes out. Every 10,000 on average we spend on all these expenses, we get 60,000 donated. So it's like a 6-to-1 leveraging of resources. But what I didn't count on, and this is God's plan, was the results. That is, if you were to look at these legal nonprofits, they are created to fight major problems, industry, really powerful things. And so if they were to win 40% of their cases, they would actually be really good. Yeah. Well, we now, every year for 26 years in a row, have won over 90% of our cases. And it's God's favor, but it's also his method. When we have a case in, Idaho, our attorney is from the best law firm in Idaho. They know the judge. They grew up in first grade. The ACLU guys flying in from LA is in a whole different place. And so, when you look at it, we should win these cases. The law's on our side. We have the best litigators in the country. And the way we're doing it is really the way every major corporation does their litigation. I mean, if Ford Motor Company in Detroit got sued in Dallas, they would never send their Detroit attorneys to Dallas. But that is what every nonprofit group does in the country, except for us. And so really we have, in a way, the biggest law firm in the country. It's called the Body of Christ. And these people are in all the law firms. They're waiting for their turn to finally work on something that really is meaningful to them. And it's kind of a beautiful circle. These people who could never afford this representation get representation like this, right? The attorneys who have these gifts that they've never been able to give in the kingdom, they can give those. And the result is these victories, these precedents that end up protecting everybody. So it really is incredible to see how that all works together in a beautiful way.
So I appreciate how you're leading this conversation. You said the word results. What are some of your results recently?
Well, I'll give you an example as to show you that some of these things are beyond our ability. It's the Lord. On average, there's about 7,000 to 8,000 requests for the Supreme Court a year to take your case. They took 58 last year. Okay, so your odds of getting them to take your case at the Supreme Court are not very good. If our goal had been for them to take like one of our cases, that would be pretty heady. Well, they didn't just take 1, 2, 3. We won 4 cases at the Supreme Court on religious liberty in like 13 months of time.
Man.
And 3 of these are what I would call landmark shifting 50 years of case law kind of opinions. One was about school choice, and how what we had and this is happening around the country, where they would say, well, you can pick any school you want as long as it's not a religious school. And we won 6-3 at the Supreme Court. Can't do that. Parents, if they have a right to pick private or public, you can't exclude their Christian schools. The other one was a really big one about the workplace. There had been an old precedent that had really decimated religious freedom in the workplace, and we overturned that precedent 9-0 at the U.S. Supreme Court, which is going to be really important for people of faith. You can't fire people anymore for using the wrong pronoun, right? I mean, they have a right to follow their faith in what they do. And then the Coach Kennedy case, which huge case, Coach fired for going to a knee to say a prayer after the game. And most people know Coach won, but what they don't know there is we overturned a 50-year-old precedent that had been cited over 7,000 times by court decisions to really crush religious freedom. We blew that precedent up. It's gone. And so all the things that most of us have been taught our whole lives, you can't have a prayer at the football game. You can't have a nativity scene on the lawn or a menorah for Hanukkah. Can't do those things. You can now, because that precedent was what was causing all these decisions that really weren't in the Constitution. They were creating a hostility to religion. It's actually great to have Hanukkah celebrated and Christmas celebrated, and I mean, to understand that we are religious people with a religious heritage. I mean, when you push the Judeo-Christian ethic out of the marketplace, you end up with some very different values. And we've been experiencing those for a number of years now. And I think that's going to be beginning to change. The biggest problem is most people know Coach Kennedy won. Most people have no idea this Lemon case, this precedent got overturned. And so slowly people are beginning to understand, but there's all these things, they put the 10 Commandments in the closet. Well, they can roll it back out now, It's okay that we have a religious heritage in this country and that we believe in religious freedom. And there's all kinds of things people can do that they think they can't. And I think slowly but surely we're going to see sort of a restoring of faith in America that begins to happen.
Yeah, so peel that onion one more layer. So it's the Lemon case. It rolls back this law. So what does it mean I can do, or I can tell other people that this is okay? There's a huge amount of ignorance in this, even though you guys won this a while ago.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of things. And really what it involves is the idea of, and then I'm just talking about Lemon in just this case, not the religious freedom in the workplace, which is going to affect hundreds of millions of people. But on this case, it's about public displays of religion. And what had happened is we have an establishment clause because the founders did not want us to establish a national church. That's what had happened in England. They didn't want the government to get behind one denomination. But the problem is 50 years ago in this Lemon case, the Supreme Court said, no, we think it means a lot more than that. And so what they did is they created these things that are not in the Constitution. They said, number one, normally you can't bring a lawsuit because you're offended by something, right? I mean, you actually have to be injured to bring a lawsuit.
Right.
But we're gonna change that in one context. If you're offended by religion, we're going to allow you to bring lawsuits. And so that was the beginning of this flurry of lawsuits. The other thing is they said, well, the Establishment Clause, we think, means more than just not establishing, a national denomination or religion. We think it means that the government really needs to separate from any sort of, so you can't, anywhere government is, you can't have religion. Well, government's everywhere, right? And so that's what led to, a nativity scene being unconstitutional, which the founders would have looked at that and said, excuse me?
Yeah.
You can't have a menorah at Hanukkah. You can't express religious things in public if the government's around. That's not what the founders were after. What the founders were after was they never wanted the government to coerce anybody with regard to their faith. They wanted full free exercise of religion. And that's what's now beginning to break out. So for instance, you've seen some things, some of the states have already passed laws that says that any school that wants to have a chaplain at school can have a chaplain at school. If you want to have the chaplain at school and say that, the kid can't see the chaplain unless the parent gives permission, I mean, that's fine. But
Sure.
those are types of things you can do. Is it okay to have a Ten Commandments poster at school? Yeah. I mean, it's part of our history, the law, the basis of the law, the rule of law. These type of things go back, and our Judeo-Christian heritage has a lot of these elements. And so if you look at our history and traditions, I mean, even in a place with monuments, it used to be that, well, you got to get rid of all the religious monuments. No, it's not like the anti-religious KGB. I mean, the founders would have never agreed with that. It's not what the Constitution says. We should go into a place like, take the Texas lawn. There are all kinds of secular monuments. There's also a Ten Commandments there, right? And there are other religious monuments there, because we do have a religious heritage and we are religious people, and it's okay to have those things as part of our history and who we are. And so that's really what Lemon changes. You're going to start seeing more like, whether it's a Ten Commandments or whether it's a nativity scene or a menorah, or whether it's In God We Trust, which is our national motto. I mean, it's going to be endless, the opportunities and things that people can do in their community to celebrate their faith.
So strategy is a big part of running any organization, and being able to have the vision and see the future is something that all companies wrestle with. You guys are seeing the future when it comes to legal decisions and as it relates to judges. I think this happened in 2020, the last time you kind of put this together. And now there's another opportunity now. What is the opportunity around judge placement? And why is it such a big deal? And how do you see the future in this?
Yeah. Well, let me step back on that question.
Yeah.
Give a groundwork first. I really believe that, there's all these leadership classes and leadership principles, and a lot of them are great general principles. But I think there's one principle that kills all the other principles and dominates for believers. I mean, I don't feel like I'm that competent, but God is. And so, if you're not starting by saying, Lord, without you, there's very little I'm going to accomplish. I need your wisdom. I need your, leading. And I'm going to walk by faith and where you're showing me to go. And this organization is not mine, it's yours. So what do you want to do? That's the starting place. So take judges. If you took God out of the equation, which I'm going to go back and put God back in.
Yes, please.
It would just be a no-brainer for somebody to go. And this is kind of what happened to us. We were going into the election and we thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and we're nonpartisan. So we're like, how are we going to advance religious freedom under Hillary Clinton? And then Trump won. And so we had a meeting and we sat down and we looked at every aspect and said, what is the greatest thing we can do under this administration for religious freedom? Well, there were 132 judicial seats open. That is not normal. These are lifetime appointments. And we thought, one case is important, but one judge is hundreds of cases, and hundreds of judges is thousands and thousands of cases. So this is the greatest thing we can do for religious liberty. So we started vetting all the judges and doing research we want to know everything about them so we get the best judges on the court possible. And we really felt God calling us to do that. And there were people when we did that essentially threatened us. And because we were kind of, I don't know, going into their domain.
Sure.
And, we knew God had called us to do this. And so, I mean, I'll never forget somebody coming to us, and it was right. They're much more powerful than us, telling us, don't get involved in this. And our response was, if God wants to destroy us, then we're his. We're going to be obedient.
That's quite the surrender.
And we did it. And we thought that there were lots of groups vetting judges, especially at the Supreme Court level. What we found out is nobody was vetting judges. They were all pretending to vet. I mean, if somebody's 50 years old, it shouldn't be a secret where they're going to go on things. And if you do your homework, I mean, really do your homework, you know that. And so, what we found out very quickly, I mean, they had people top of the list to be the next Supreme Court justice, and we'd walk up with an opinion this person had written that was horrible for religious freedom, or, you name the issue, and we would watch their hair light on fire because they had no idea. And so that's what we've done, is really just give data so that good decisions can be made. And the politics of so-and-so is my friend, or if I push this guy, this will be good for me. One of our favorite phrases during the first 4 years when we had this under Trump and then there was all these judicial nominations, one of our most common phrases was, I don't care if it's your mother. We want to see the data. We want to see the record. We're not going by so-and-so is my friend. Okay, great. Irrelevant. We want to know how they ruled. What have they, do they have the courage to do the right thing when the pressure's on? You got to look at all that stuff. And you can. When somebody is 50 years old, you can find that. And
there's history. That's right.
And somebody just had to do it. So we did it. And we didn't know what was going to, I mean, we had to oppose, we had to oppose some of Trump's judges. Imagine that. They don't appreciate that. But we stopped them. We stopped a judge who was being pushed because he was very close to the chief of staff at this time and was going to go to a high level. We wrote an editorial in public saying unacceptable. And, we figured we'd get run over, right? I mean, what power do we have against all these? But there were a couple of senators, Senator Hawley and Senator Cruz, that looked at the data and they said, this is unacceptable. We're not putting a guy on here who's been bad on religious liberty. We're not doing that. And so we're nonpartisan, but we're about putting good judges on the court and providing good data so good decisions can be made. And so what I love about that is, we talked about earlier, these huge wins at the Supreme Court. They would have never happened if the judges hadn't happened 5 years earlier. So it was God's way to say, I'm about to move things. And I'm going to start with the judges, even though you're not going to know what I'm doing. You just be obedient. And then 5 years from now, you're going to start seeing some results. So that's the beauty of now we're starting again 8 years later, and we know what this process is and what it means for the future. And so we're about to work on helping, put 150, 160 more judges on the court for life. And boy, this will set the future for 20 years for our kids and our grandkids. And we know how important it is. And we know we can do it. We've done it before. And it's all in the Lord's hands. These are all his people making these ultimate decisions, but we can at least do our part, provide data. And I think we're going to do even better than last time, because there's a Senate which is a little more conservative. It's 53-47. It was 51-49. So they can actually put on more solid judges that maybe couldn't have gotten through last time, more Clarence Thomases, et cetera. So that's going to make a big difference. And it is to your business. It is to your religious freedom. It is to wherever you believe about life, about the Second Amendment, about, just go down the list of 100 things you probably care about. All of those things are going to be dramatically impacted by this. So it's a unique thing in that you've got something that is so multiplicative in its impact. It's just huge and into the future for 25 years. And yet it's all determined by really all you've got is the next 2 years, because you've got a Senate and the administration that are on board on this. So it's kind of unique. There's an urgency, and a long-term impact. And those are rare to see. And so I think people in business recognize that, right? Entrepreneurs look at that and they go, this is where I'm investing.
That's right.
Right now, long-term impact, long-term multiplication, huge results. That's where I'm putting my money. And I feel that way about the investment of what we're about to do here.
So, just to kind of wrap up, one, following your calling, um, you've done a long obedience in the same direction for 36 years. There's a lot of switching. People like to do lots of different things, especially entrepreneurs. We're broken in that way. It's a 7-year itch for sure. So 36 years of doing one thing, like, thank you for that. And to show us that, results come through time. Unique business models, just everything you've said, it has a unique flavor to it. And it's no surprise because it's God inspired. Right.
Yeah.
And then how do you make him the top so that you just go do the thing? Your surrender of like, hey, if this thing's toast, it's toast. Maybe it's our time is up and, we'll go do something else. I think that is unbelievably unique. All right. So bonus question. And then we'll ask, how do we find you? So how are you being sharpened, challenged, and inspired? You do so many things. What's lighting your fire right now?
I mean, obviously this is something that is so complicated, so beyond our ability to figure out, that it's always sharpening, challenging. I mean, for instance, you talked about earlier committed to one thing for a long time, but I'll point out when I started, I was doing the cases. Well, there came a time as I'm growing when I had to make a decision. Do you want to do the cases or do you want to run the organization? Right. And so at a point, this is every nonprofit, you've got this person that loves the thing, but then they come to a point where they're going to need to build infrastructure if they're going to do more to help the thing. And so I remember having that conversation with the Lord and saying, if you want me to do this other thing, I mean, I don't know how to fundraise and all this kind of stuff, then I'll do it. And I mean, it was almost immediate. All of a sudden, I got a hunger for learning about fundraising and learning about building, so you have infrastructure to do more of this. So it was a change for me. I mean, there's still a lot of the things I love that I still get to argue and do media appearances and all that, but it's different. And my role changed, which it has to if you're growing your organization. So just have to be open to, and I've seen people do the other, which I think really is an incredibly example of humility. They start the organization, but they realize they're not the right person to lead it. And so they stay in the work and bring somebody to kind of head it. So I've seen both, but there's definitely changes when you're in an organization, especially if it's growing. And that's always interesting. You're always learning.
So that's for profit or non-for-profit.
Yeah.
I think those are exactly the same. So that working on versus in the business is all of our challenge all the time. And we always like to joke that if you're not wildly uncomfortable or faking it, then you're probably not moving the organization forward enough, fast or hard enough. So thanks for staying uncomfortable. That's pretty cool. Okay. Where can they find out more about you and First Liberty? Where are people going?
It's really easy. It's just spell it out, firstliberty.org. And so firstliberty.org. And what I would really encourage people to do at the very least, I mean, obviously, whatever God's calling you to do, but make sure you sign up for, if you go down the page just a little, and we have an insider alert, and it comes out every Friday. And we take all the stuff. We had 360 cases last year. So, I mean, obviously we can't tell people about everything, but on Fridays, we take what we think are the top 5 or 6 issues for people who care about their faith and religious freedom. And we have a link to each of those issues where you can go further if you want to look at what happened. New case filed, new case being argued at the Supreme Court, situation with judges, whatever it is. It's a great way to kind of be in the know. It's also a great way to pray for people. For instance, if you knew Coach Kennedy was going to be in the Supreme Court tomorrow and you knew to pray for him, that would be awesome, right? I mean, and we have people like that all the time. And it's a great way to be educated so you can educate others. Because a lot of people, they don't know that we're winning these cases. And so they're scared to do things. And I think believers need to be emboldened. And I think the more people understand that the law is on their side, the more they will do things and cause change that are great. So you can be the person who helps people get emboldened because they're seeing the wins, the victories. So I would just say make sure when you go to firstliberty.org that you sign up for that insider alert, and then you'll get that every Friday, and that'll keep you in the loop on what's going on.
I'm gonna go 2 layers deeper for you then. You can also download the For-Profit Business Leaders Kit. If you go to the website, go to Connect, scroll down, there's resources. We'll put the direct link in the show notes.
Yep.
And as you said, there's a nonprofit, and there's a lot that goes on to make all this. So not only is it the giving up of hours for lawyers, but there's opportunities to come alongside Kelly and First Liberty to help restore faith in America by giving. So if anything you've heard today has struck a chord, then please consider looking at other ways to get involved. And if you have a lawyer buddy that works for one of the top 100 that wants a case somewhere in his life that he can give to God, perhaps forward this link so they can hear a story, perhaps for the first time. Every single one of you has a couple of lawyers on your speed dial, so hit forward, text it to that person. Um, Kelly, I appreciate your time and what you're doing to restore faith in America. This has been pretty cool, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And I'll add, if anybody has a question about running their business according to their faith, and there's people try to intimidate them out of that, call us. I mean, we don't charge anything. We've got a booklet on faith in the workplace and all that, but every situation's different. So call us. We're happy to walk through, because usually the fear is unfounded, and people, religious freedom is protected even in running your business.
One of our values is bold and not rash. So what I love about what you do is it is bold, but it is full of wisdom. So thanks, man. Thanks for being bold.
Thank you.